Okay. Good afternoon. I'd like to call this meeting to order. The Belchertown Branding Committee. It's 12:01 p.m. I'd like to have a roll call at this time.
Chris Martin here.
Lisa Ducharme here.
Ed Knight here.
Nate Shattuck here.
Kate, you there?
Kate Nato here. Sorry, I didn't realize I was muted.
Okay. Well, moving on. I'd like to ask for a motion to approve the minutes from April 16th, 2025.
So moved.
Second.
Seconded.
Give it to Lisa.
Okay. All in favor?
Ed Knight, aye.
Chris Martin, aye.
Kate Nato, aye.
Nate Shattuck, aye. Lisa, do you have a vote?
I seconded the motion.
Oh, no, to vote for approval. Approve the vote.
Oh, sorry. Yes.
Okay.
Right,
Okay.
good.
All right, moving on. So next up, we have the Belchertown Branding project updates with Danielle. Welcome, Danielle. Katie.
Thanks, everyone. Hope everyone is okay. In the interest of time, just because I know that we are going to want to have some discussion, I think it would be best for us to dive right into the logo conversation. I will just share that we have put any revisions on the town seal just on pause for now so that we can make the tight deadline that we have for the logo. And as a way to enter us into that conversation, I just want to do a little bit of context. Where we are right now in the design process is to inform the concept of the logo. So by concept, we mean the format of the logo, any key elements, any key themes. It's not the design, and Katie will speak more to that. But our goal for the end of this meeting, and we'll give folks tonight to reflect and send any written commentary by tomorrow, as I said by email, is for Katie to have a clear picture of the the format, for lack of a better word. I know that's Katie, not like it's a little reductive to say that way, but just the format that the logo should take. So with that in mind, I'm going to pass it to Katie to share those concepts with us, and we can have a discussion of that. And then once we move through some of that content, we can tap back in to talk about the timeline, because there are some questions that I have regarding town voting and select board approval, et cetera. But we can save logistics for after the good stuff. Katie?
Hi, everyone. Feels kind of like a long time no see. I feel like I've been just diving deep into all the research and then what I sent the other day. So to echo Danielle, I think she covered kind of what this first stage is. It's supposed to be messy. It's supposed to be not perfect. The purpose of that is, especially with what I'm thinking Belchertown's logo is going to be, we're going to need to do a full, tight, clean illustration. So rather than fully illustrating something now that might be, turned down or not have the right elements in it, it's let's figure out that direction before we go into the really nitty-gritty clean design, just to save time. That's really the primary reason on my end why I do this. And already your feedback has been great. Danielle shared some of that with me. So I figured I'd just talk very simply through what I sent over the other day. And then I have kind of one other discussion kind of inspiration board I thought we could all look at. So I'll share my screen, just talk everything through. I know you guys have already seen these, and then I'll open up for more conversation. All right, so can we see this okay?
Yep.
All right, so again, just to like describe my personal process, it's all just very simple, nothing too intense. That's why I kind of highlighted that first gray bar here. This is an older project. And then those final full brand designs will look something like what's on the bottom, the full colors, the icons, the imagery. It'll be a full picture and a final logo to decide on at that point. Included a bit of what we heard. I think everyone, from our last meeting kind of is in consensus of a naturey look and feel with some history brought in. And I put some of the notes that will be in the full research document coming at you today or tomorrow for you to look over. And I gathered the actual visual imagery that people in the survey brought up, and I think we're seeing the exact same echoes of all the nature and then the historic places and monuments. So again, quickly, concept one is kind of thinking about that illustration, and if we would want it in a badge form. That seemed to be kind of popular and ones that were sent from you all and from ones that we looked at research wise. They can be used a lot of different ways and kind of have more of a organic, like hand style to something much more modern. This one right now seems to be the least favorite from the initial feedback we've heard. This was a thought on instead of Belchertown as a whole, since there are some issues with the name itself, focusing in on just the B and using that as the main focus of the logo. And then lastly is kind of what I see as the more classic version of a logo, kind of pulling the full name into the design with just a little bit around it. So whether that be architectural details for the history, nature details for the kind of honing in on conservation, whatever that might look like. So I guess I'll open up the floor if we want to talk about these. And then, like I said, I have something else to show you that you haven't seen yet to kind of open the floor for more inspiration. I'll also, maybe to kick things off, a big kind of difference I've been seeing with the committee throughout this process is modern versus the hand-drawn and organic look. I feel like we're kind of split down the middle on that, which might end up being the two of the full logo design brand versions we get. But that's something I'm definitely seeing as some people want to lean more modern, kind of with the very simple kind of illustrations, and some want to lean a little more illustrative, like you can see in this, with just more details and that hand-drawn feel. So I don't know if anyone wants to pop in, but those have been my very
I'm also happy to read Molly's feedback, or Katie, I don't know if you want to share that.
So yeah, maybe in the next portion, that's kind of what I was going to lean into, because I've gathered up the logos that other people submitted.
Can I jump in?
Yep.
And I apologize for all the background noise. I didn't realize my mic was so sensitive. So for me, the middle idea of the fancy B, if you will, wasn't, none of those really resonated with me. For me, the important thing is that we have, the full logo available with the town name and everything else on it, as well as a graphical element with it. So the lockup, if you will. And I feel like those that are being shown in concept 3 really lack the ability to have the graphic pulled out as a separate representation for the town. A lot of things require logos to be shown in a square, if you will. So if we don't have the graphic element that we can pull out, we're really then reducing Belchertown, which is a fairly lengthy name, but not as long as some, onto this space. And then there's just all this white space around it. And you're really going to lose like any kind of logo concept at that point, because you're not filling this full square space. So anything that can be pulled out and has more of the square element to it, is where I'm leaning.
Yep, that's one of my concerns as well.
don't even
Yeah, I
know.
want to. Yeah, I second that as well. We're thirded at this point. Thinking of any of the documents and other stuff that we've had to work with in the communication committee, it is seemingly important to be able to do both a landscape and a portrait or square version of the logo. There's just many use cases, and even being able to just extract, just the icon. So like 1 and 2, like you could do that. 3, not so much. So I would very much shy away from the concept 3 in any cases.
Spending more time on LinkedIn these days. It's kind of
And 1, like it's like I could see us pulling like just that icon on the left, and like if it's well enough known, then people will like understand that, or like I could see it even like with a hat where like that's the logo on the front, Belchertown on the back.
one of the things that
If we wanted to go with something like that.
doing here at Breeds Hill is like
Yeah, so I just want to, I guess, third that like concept 3, just I do not think is going to work for us.
Right.
I've been feeling the same, so it's nice to get a full consensus.
And I think a lot of the feedback that we've gotten thus far by email is in alignment with concept 1, even though maybe those weren't the words that were used in email. So I'm curious if how others are feeling about concept 1.
Can I comment on that?
Yep.
So I actually was more for concept number 3. Concept number 2 for me was just out. I wanted to see the full name of Belchertown, not just the B. But I kind of felt like the badges were maybe a little bit too simplistic for me. I wanted to see something that was more flowing. Although, Kate makes a good point with having to fit something into a square, and it's not something that I'm aware of or know much about. So, if more of a flowing concept is going to be difficult, I can understand that. But I did share a logo with Katie yesterday from the town of Plymouth, Indiana, where you had that more flowy concept, but you were also able to bring in nature and architecture. And there's something about that logo that I really love it. And I feel like it's something that we could make our own and be able to pull everything in terms of, not just having a little square badge, but also bringing in the nature and the architecture concepts. So I don't know if anybody's able to Google that, or if Kate, I can share it if you'd like, but.
So I've got that on the next portion to discuss. I pulled that one in, and Nate sent one as well. And then kind of anything you all sent me, you're on your own, we're going to review next.
Okay.
I also I didn't send any notes and knowing that we had till tomorrow, but I hear what Nicole's saying, and I think it makes a lot of sense. And like the badges shown next to the Belchertown wording on slide 1 really doesn't portray any openness.
Yeah.
With the way that everything is so rectangular and boxy, it's kind of like fighting against wanting to say, open spaces and community and welcoming and everything, and very close and tight.
I agree with that as well.
That's kind of what I've been thinking about as well. And maybe instead of thinking it as a badge, it's just an illustration. Maybe it doesn't have hard edges. It is a little bit more flowy, more landscape. Yeah, I've definitely picked up on that. So thanks.
I definitely want to add in that I am like in slide 3, it offers more visual to the town in regards to like Belchertown itself, like the fonts up in the slide 1, I feel are more representative, like maybe even with a higher B, but the flow down to slide 3, I think is what everybody's really trying to achieve and show the beautiful town we live in, right? Be able to show those elements.
Yep.
And I think my challenge is I didn't like any of them. And I felt that the first ones just felt so old school. They felt like 1950s. They didn't feel like present day. I like the Plymouth, Indiana one where you've got the flow, you've got a really up-to-date modern kind of logo, and there's a bunch of other states and cities that have a variety of different that flow and actually identify. And you can put all of these in squares, by the way, regardless of what it looks like. All of them can go in the squares and all of them can go in the circles. I absolutely did not like concept two. There's been some issues with changing the name of Belchertown over the years. There's a lot of, and not having the name, I think disrespects Belchertown. If you're going to actually do a logo, you have to have a name. It's not an option on a marketing standpoint, which was my challenge. And the bottom one, to be honest, I like the word Belchertown, but that was the best I could give you out of the concept because I couldn't. My challenge was based on what you sent us, and I haven't seen the report yet, but based on what you sent us and what people liked and what people commented on, none of these seem to fit that concept. If I was to come up with a design, it would not have been these because I think these don't represent Belchertown or
So-
the feedback that you got, but that's just the way I saw it when I looked at it. I appreciate the effort. I know how complicated this whole process is. And I loved how you drew everything at the very beginning on the first page. So I actually stopped and looked at that first before I even went down to anything else. Because I understood where you were going. I just don't know how you had that and then came up with these.
So
But
Lisa,
that was my thought.
I have a question for you, Lisa, as a follow-up. What I'm hearing from you is actually that you like concept, not design, number one, which is the full name of the town and a pictorial representation alongside it. Is that correct?
So a picture with it, yes. The little type of design that there's currently there, no. But
Right,
yes,
and
I
that's
like
not
the
okay.
concept of the picture next to it, like the Indiana one. It had a picture, it had intent. I know exactly why that particular town had that particular graphic. That was
So thank you. And I think that there's consistency from what I'm hearing across the board that there is an interest and a desire and an approval of a pictorial representation of the town. The details of that are like to be discussed in this meeting with Katie, where we determine exactly what elements and what style and the full name of the town. And then embedded in concept one is the question of, do we want Belchertown or town of Belchertown? And by email, we've received the feedback, Belchertown, not necessarily town of Belchertown.
Yep. Yeah, and I think with that pictorial version, with these concepts, these are not, from everything we've heard, right? Nothing is going to look like these concepts. They're just to start navigating us into the directions. And I think hearing, the flowy and the openness as adjectives to apply to the next more, I'm going to call it an illustration more than a badge. I think is kind of the route that we're headed. And I think you'll see that a lot on the ones that that we all shared, like Nate shared the great one, Nicole, that Plymouth one. So yeah, I mean, is there anything else we should bring up with these concepts, or should we move into then the key elements? And I think that's something that's been maybe a little tough for me, just deciding what should be clearly featured, right? We could show the stone house, but that's going to take up a lot of room and a lot of very intricate design within the logo itself. So maybe do we just show kind of a stone texture somewhere instead? So it's kind of these things of what needs to be clearly shown from your all's perspective versus what can be a bit more represented.
Staffing or
Yeah, I
so
think,
if we were to, they worked in a challenging environment.
Okay, Ellie, go.
I was just going to say, so if we were to like convalesce around a couple themes that we wanted to make sure we showed in the picture, like I know like the stone house kept coming up, but Like, are people going to pick up the intricacies of stone? And, the library came up a lot. Are people going to pick up like the steeple shape of the library and know it's the library and not one of the churches in town? Like, if we were to pick like deciding, landmarks or features within town, like how many would you say that we have to stick to? Like, is it 3? Is it 5? Is it 1?
So my personal I've already started sketching just from all of your feedback. And I've been including kind of simple versions of the stone house, the library, agriculture, and the Quabbin. Those have been the 4 that I'm really trying to make sure are noticeable in whatever way that ends up being. So if there's anything outside of that that you think should be definitely obvious, or any of those should be changed, but that's just my initial idea right now.
So to that end, did like the word bubbles and everything show that the stone house came up more often than farming?
Yes and no. I'd say I'm kind of pairing the stone house with the historical portion that people are really pushing from all of our feedback. There's other ways we can show history if we don't need to show the stone house itself.
Really, I personally call into question the stone house. I'm as coming to this as a newer member of Belchertown. What 5 years now, and I know everybody. Like a lot of other people have been here much longer. But the stone house, like, really to me doesn't mean a whole lot. And if we're looking forward and we're looking for new business and things like that, like I don't think this. Like I personally just don't think the stone house resonates with me as a new member of Belchertown. And also looking at what is it, page 3, what we heard.
Background noise here, Chris, I'm sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, there's there's another conversation going on just to the side. I apologize if it is really loud. I can try to.
Hard to hear.
Gotcha. I could try to. Here we go. Is that a lot better?
Oh, a lot better.
Okay, sorry, I had the wrong mic picking up. Apologies for that. Yeah, so to just quickly reiterate is like as a new member of town, I don't resonate with the stone house, right? Like I understand its historical significance, but if this is we've seen from the poll results on page 3 that people want to talk about like the nature and the agriculture and stuff like that a little bit less, or like think about those things more than history. And if we're looking forward with things, like I just keep calling into question Stonehouse and whether or not that's an important landmark.
Chris and committee, is there any other element that evokes history in a way that feels a bit more resonant outside of agriculture and nature, which in their way may evoke history as well? But is there another architectural element that you can point to?
Uptown, the church uptown.
We have one town clock.
I would say the library, right? That's the most historical yet progressive landmark in town.
Number 1 was I'd say the clock.
Yeah, I think people don't understand though that the clock is owned by the town and not the church that it's associated with. And I think if we went to show that clock, most people would assume that we're showing the church. Like that's such a fine line in there that like if you're not in the know, you don't know that the town owns the clock and not the church.
Town owns the land.
The library is far safer.
I would say church wasn't something that came up. Like the term church was not one of our most common terms that came up.
No.
The congregation.
And I would avoid putting any religious iconography on the logo whatsoever.
But that structure is far more than a church.
It
always was.
Yeah.
That might be true.
That was the primary
speak to
meeting place of the entire town. For 1 day a week, it might have been used as a church. The other 6 days, it was the town hall. It was the meeting hall. It was a place to gather. It was so much more than a church.
So let's put the town hall, right? Let's put the current town hall because that's what it is now.
1923.
And the future. Right. Are we looking back on our old historical stuff that, yes, it was a church though. There's some significance there. There's some
Yeah, but we
You know, it's an
can't, we
icon that's
can't
going to,
abandon
like, we have so many
history
other icons. We have so many
altogether.
other things.
But you can't abandon the full history, right? You want to
Yeah, but
incorporate the
you
new.
can't
So
go down this history road with us because then you have to look at the history of the state school. You can't pick and choose history. That's not an option because there are other people that like brought up on the notes and in the surveys about the, you know, the Native Americans that were on this land first and everything else. You cannot pick and choose history.
I just want to, there was something that Katie, you said around um like pulling out an element in a somewhat more abstracted way, like from the stone house, for instance. The most kind of recognizable element are, of course, the stones and the surface. And to me, I think something like that, like pulling out this surface of stonework, could also, it suggests the stone house. It also, depending on placement, really offers something of a narrative of like a foundation, like the history as the foundation of the town as it continues to develop and move forward. I think pulling out, you know, maybe not like full architecture, but these really recognizable components paired with some other kind of abstracted components of these other kind of features of the town could be really successful and create both a little bit of this structure, like the window from the Memorial Le Clap Library, for instance, as a structure that's it's the spokes go outward. So it does speak to that idea earlier too of like outwardness. I think there's a way to kind of pull some of these elements, graphic elements from the architecture out.
I do like that concept.
Mhm. And I will toss in, not to open, we're not going to talk about the seal at all, but it is important to note that the stone house, the markers, the church clock, and the carriage are very, very distinctly represented there. Not to say they shouldn't or can't be as well in the logo, I'm just putting it out there as an overall content position.
The Quabbin spillway, is obviously when it runs over is a waterfall that people take a lot of pictures of and talk about all the time. That could be something that is representative on a couple of different scales. It's pretty, it's part of the town. Yeah, okay, it's not 200 years old, but it's almost 100. So I don't know, just a thought.
No.
I'm all
I
about
think for
that.
me, I think for me, when we're looking at this and we're looking at those different aspects and finding a way to intertwine them into a logo, it's not going to be one little piece all the way around. It's going to be intertwined. But there's nothing that says the logo has to include something that's 200 years old. When you're thinking about a logo for the town, or actually even for a business, however it is you want to think about it that works best, is it going to be a good visual identifier? When somebody sees that logo, can they identify it as Belchertown? And is it going to promote pride in our town? Those are generally, when I'm talking with people about their logos, that's generally the two key things that I look at. So when we look at the notes that are on the, I don't know which page I'm on, but the handwritten notes, nature, farms, community, um, and what I find very interesting, I, for me, I always think of the Quabbin. That's one of the first things I think of. But they've got the library, and to be honest, I didn't even know. And of course, we can't go by me because I didn't really pay attention to Belchertown. But I didn't even know what the Stone House was. I saw the signs when I drove by, but I knew what the library was because the library had that significance. It's cozy, it's quiet. And this one has, so if you look at the things that people said are important to them about the feel of Belchertown, it is the nature, it is the library, the Quabbin. And the fair, which everybody seems to love the fair.
I think we have to remember that part of being a New England town, and I think any New England town really is we put a lot of weight on our historical architecture. And I think that's why we all kind of, or most of us kind of go towards the things like the Methodist Church and the Stone House, because that's part of New England is the historical architecture that I think maybe you don't see in other areas of the country.
And our library has great historic reference too. I mean, just the beautiful windows, the one that has multiple shades when you look at it as a certain time. Um, so
No,
any of those work.
I'll add, I think, Nicole, that was a good point. And thinking about, your place, and I dive into this a bit in the research document, but Belchertown's place in the region, right? We're trying to attract people to come visit, people to stop in for a day instead of just drive through, businesses to come and stay. So while New England, right, is the greater region, how can we get even more nitty-gritty about what Belchertown is? And, I think that's a unique point you brought up. If that's the architecture is a general common thing in the whole region, well, what's interesting about Belchertown, right? The agriculture, the Quabbin, the library is a specific community hub and resource. I think you brought up a good point of how can we continue to narrow, right, while keeping that open and flowy feel, potentially. I'm going to stop us here. You all can send me anything you need to send to me and Danielle. But I want to do one kind of quick, more fun look at things. So these are all of the logos that you all sent me at various times throughout this process. So I thought we could just open up the floor and, as long as nobody gets their feelings hurt, comment on any that you might love or you're really not liking. So I've got the Plymouth, Indiana that Nicole had noted. I won't call any others out, but these are a mix of what I had initially shared and favorites from that, and then ones that you all sent me. So I'll open up the floor. You can say, yes, that one, or what are we thinking with this one?
Is that Pelham, Massachusetts? Is that Pelham, Massachusetts?
It's not. It's okay. Alabama.
Okay, I just want to make sure that we're not gonna be too close to the town that's right next door to us.
Yep.
I like how the Canton and the Pelham have the art on the side of it, and it's easy to pull out and pull it into a square. I like the noting in Canton of the state underneath it. And I kind of like how in our current quote unquote logo, how we show like the Massachusetts underneath the Belchertown too. I feel like that's kind of a cool thing. Like we're the only Belchertown out there, so it doesn't really matter if we include our state.
We could do an option,
Yeah, I feel like the Canton one feels a little clip artish or iconish, if you will, versus like the Pelham one, which I feel like is more art, if you will. And then like for me personally, then like jumping to like the Zionsville and the Huron Shores, the colors that pop in those, as well as having the elements that are, have the ability to go to a more square frame.
I like the Zionsville because it is very flowish in the Plymouth, but I also like the Huron Shores. Because you can fit Belchertown there and give a variety just as they did with their shores. The Canton, I think, is too much of an icon kind of thing, and I think almost the same thing with Pelham. Pelham doesn't look as natural based.
And what's interesting is those are very closed in, right? Kind of like those initial badges in the concepts they showed, they were very blocked in, whereas some people like where there's not an outline, again, going with that openness.
I like the openness. Yes, I agree with Kate on the Massachusetts. I do like that concept. I do as well like the simplicity of the Zionsville. It's very clean. It's very simple. It just gives a clear image. Whereas the her sorry, my dogs. Her on shores just stop it as a busier type of logo. And I do like the Plymouth one that was sent in as well. But I more so really like the Zionsville. I just think it's very clean and it just gives a clear, simple image.
What
So
I
I,
worry about with Zionsville is, are we going to start having issues over what we want to see? Because it is so simple. Are we all going to be able to come together on one design because of how simple it is? Whereas if you look down at Plymouth or Huron, it seems like you can bring a few different things into it, like the nature and the architecture.
Well, I think
I
you'll be
think
able to do it with Zionville because if you put Belchertown instead of that Z as the landscape, you're going to have a B as a landscape. So you see how it's
right.
got that Z and the things on the Z? In this case, you'll have the B. So it'll be a little bit more spread out. So you could have a little bit more flexibility there.
Well, and I should
what
note,
what are the
none of these would be copied exactly. So if we did, took inspiration from Zionsville, we wouldn't put a B similar to theirs. That would be an issue. But I think going, Nicole, what you're saying, yes, they focus on trees, but we could have a couple things within that. I think Maureen's talking about how the illustration is very simple, right? It's just kind of a shape and then a line for a tree, versus looking at the Plymouth. It's a lot more sketch. There's a lot more details. There's gradient, which can get a little iffy at times for a logo and repurposing it.
so I have
Matt,
a
were you?
couple thoughts I want to throw in. So Zionsville, I think, is just a little too simplistic, in my opinion. Whereas the Heron and Plymouth, they definitely do, like, you see that, you know it, like it sort of stands out a little bit more. With Zionsville is I guess if you've seen it a time and time again, but otherwise just like some tree designs. Um, and so I actually was one of the ones that submitted a lot of like the Greensburg, Kansas, and like the North Adams, the Fall Rivers, where it is very like simple but iconic, and that like you see it, you're going to recognize it, you're going to see like time and time again, like that's going to be it's like easy enough to sketch, if you wanted to, if you're doodling stuff, looking at it again. And so like I liked that concept to make it like very plain, very simple. Whenever we're printing things, it'll be easy. Whenever we're doing, if we need to make it to stamps or something like that, like we don't have to worry about a black and white version versus a color version. Like it's very clear, very simple. And I do like that, but I am leaning towards the side of that openness. That like that is one of the key concepts of Belchertown, is that it's huge. It's land mass wise, it's massive. Um, and so I do sort of go back to that, like Plymouth, Indiana, the Huron Shores. I think those are really nice designs that I think we should follow towards those.
I will add in a question for you all that's been something as I'm working on finalizing these, is the illustration style. And I think, Chris, you just brought up a good point. If we look at the North Adams and Fall River, it's very clean, clear, simplistic illustration compared to the Plain City, Ohio and the Plymouth, which are a bit more sketched. There's more texture. Is anyone leaning one way or the other? Of course, I'm leaning into those being kind of parts of the, couple concepts so we can see different versions, but I'm curious of any initial thoughts there.
I have, I feel like we're going to have a challenge with the amount of text just based on Belchertown alone. If you're trying to incorporate Belchertown in Massachusetts and then match a diagram or an illustration to go with it, how do you marry that all together? And how do you do it? Do you do it with an arch? Do you do it with a square? How limited are you? we're looking at Zionsville, but Belchertown has I don't know, 6 or 8 more letters, and then that kind of thing. From a design standpoint, I mean, are we trying to get away from the hand drawn, or are we trying to get away, have something that's more erector set style?
Yeah, that's my main question.
That erector set with the seal, though. I think when I hear that concept from Chris, we have that covered in the seal. Like the seal really is that thing that you're going to be probably implementing on most of your stuff. This is like trying to be, representative of the town as a logo versus like falling in line with more of a seal stamped approach.
And by the way, Belchertown only has one more letter than Zionsville. But somebody had previously mentioned we really don't have to put Massachusetts on the logo because Belchertown is only in Massachusetts. In fact, it's the only city I'm able to find that's only in one state.
I had submitted a few of these, the Huron Shores, Philly, NYC, and also the city of Oakland. And to this idea of like style, I had submitted the city of Oakland, in part because it's simplified. The tree, it's the oak tree, but it's in this woodblock style. And I don't know if you can tell from this if you could maybe zoom in a little bit, you can see it has a kind of woodblock style where there's multiple lines that make up each line. And that's really gets at this like craftsman style that it not only kind of marks part of the historical piece of the city, but also the architecture that you're seeing. So I think I like this one, and it's super successful. Like people wear this logo on their clothes, like it's everywhere. But it kind of like it shares some of those ideas of time and sense of place really like indirectly through that style. So I just want to, like uplift this idea of the style can really also do some of the work towards indicating what kind of place this is. And if we want to potentially have a historical element, maybe that is a place that happens is in that stylistic choice.
And Maud, I agree completely with you, and I'll add that you had mentioned earlier, and we had talked about, stone house, but just showing the stone. Here you could easily say just general community togetherness by the way that the lines are intertwined. You can say growth by a tree. There are many ways that are simplistic and maybe not as obvious at the first look that can have those themes involved.
I have an idea that I'd like to share. So Katie, going back to concept number 2 of just the bee, and it was the one that was the bee that had the blue and the green in it to represent water and nature. Could we take something like a Huron or a Plymouth and make the bee have a design in it for the water and the nature in order to take. Okay, so let me stop there. So and then have that be also a part of what we use. So Maud, a sweatshirt with just the bee on it, with the water and the nature. But our true logo to be something like what we're seeing with, say, Plymouth or Huron, where we bring in more things. But the bee is like our short nickname.
Yes,
what does everybody think about that? Like making the bee have the design in it as part of the logo, and then being able to use it separately in other areas.
And that was my initial thought. That's why I included it. And I think, as we've all noted, it needs to be versatile, which you see City of Portland kind of did that with their P. You look at Plymouth, Indiana. How does that get smaller, right? How does that become?
Yeah.
So
and that's kind of a nod to what Kate was saying, because you could take that B and get it in a square easily.
Exactly. But you can also take a lot of these elements, like the city of Philadelphia, and just put the bell on a shirt. And with Pelham, just put the circle on a shirt. And even with Plymouth, just putting the stuff above Plymouth on the shirt. and we're only seeing what they're out facing. We don't know if they have something different that they're putting on their shirts. Maybe they have more of a square size here. The other thing too, when thinking about like putting stuff on shirts, is you can really start losing detail, especially when you're getting into embroidery with all the nuances and stuff. And then also, like if you were to go the embroidery route, the more colors you use, the more expensive the shirt and the logo is going to cost. And yes, we're getting like, you know, all black versions and all white versions and all that stuff from Katie, and we could certainly go that way on apparel if we were looking to keep costs down. But a lot of these have things you can pull off to put on shirts. Like even Laconia one, maybe they just have that sailboat on a shirt. So I don't think like just focusing on like this direct, what can we put on a shirt is the right way to go forward, rather thinking about, you know, what can we add to the shirt after we're happy with what the logo looks like. And I don't necessarily think like having the B as part of what we're doing up and down is the way to go, because a lot of places go by B Town. Like we're not the only people that are showing off the B.
I think all good points around. I will say, just as the designer and brand specialist, let's say we went with something like Plymouth, I would still make a simple version that could be used. I wouldn't just give you that because I know it's not versatile. I think from all of these or most of these, we're seeing those parts that can be pulled out, even if it's not a B, even if it's, you know, these circles or like Kate just said, the sailboat. So I think that's a great thing to bring up. And I think we're all kind of starting to echo the same things to me, kind of the illustration of a landscape that feels open, that's clean with modern elements, and then something that's versatile, you know.
And recognizable.
Yes, yes. And not just trees, right? We want it to be, no, this is the Guavin. Or
well, I think, you know, like when I think of that Plain City, Ohio, that must be something that is epic in the town because that's what they chose to put there. And, you know, in one glance, you know where it's from. You know, and that's what we have here. You know, it's like a resume. You have one glance to see what it's all about. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh yeah, that's where that is.
But I also think that we need to keep into consideration what Ed said. We're known for history. New England is historic. If we think about what Belchertown is, if we think about what Belchertown is and the historicness, and that was an ongoing comment over and over and over again, was everybody loved the historic aspect of Belchertown. So whatever it is, it should, even though we want it modern, and it can be modern, and you can still have that glimmer of historic in there.
Yep, agreed.
And so far for what we're, oh, go ahead.
You kind of want it to pop and live at the same time as well and say, hey, here we are.
And what we're hearing for historic was what Katie had suggested, what he had talked about was Stonehouse, Town Common, Library, agriculture is also kind of fitting into history. Quabbin maybe less so, but part of it. Are there any other elements that feel really, and I don't know if I said library, are there any other historical elements, icons, architecture that, I mean, I saw in the chat, gazebo, I don't know if anyone else has thoughts on what that's gonna be. We have the carriage, obviously, is on the logo, I mean, on the seal, sorry, I misspoke. But anything else?
Well, to that point, with the carriage being on the town seal, our town is just now releasing a new digital newsletter, which is slated to go out tomorrow for the first edition, and that's the Carriage Town Chronicles, and that too features a carriage. But I also don't want to like throw the baby out with the bathwater and ignore like all the little post-it notes that we collected from people was there any consideration for carriages in there?
And something I've kind of been thinking, just as a simple thing, is, what's a good example of one of these? We can add with Pelham, you have the sun as that little circle, we could add a little carriage wheel somewhere that makes sense, not just randomly tossed in there. There are ways we can pull these nods, but I think I, at this point, just kind of need to put stuff in front of you all, which is what we're going to do next week. And you'll really see kind of the whole picture. And then, maybe it's like, hey, we really love number 1, but can we pull in the carriage idea from number 3? So they will definitely be able to be kind of massaged a bit.
Katie, is it customary or common for a town's seal to be somehow, along the same style lines as the logo? Like, is it good to have them nicely paired, or does it seem like we don't have, a cohesive message when we have a seal that's totally different from a logo?
I think because you all are doing this process and we are digitizing the seal, it makes sense to make them at least cousins.
Yeah.
My plan, and we're still going through it with Terry, but my plan for the seal, because we're digitizing, we'll have a black and white, of course, but then with the colors, making sure that those colors end up being the brand colors, and that we all decide on. And second, I keep kind of coming back to that modern versus hand-drawn look, and I think that's, again, where I'm going to try and tie the two in, so that one's not very sketched out and hand-drawn, the other is not extremely modern, but they either reflect or both kind of share the same vibe of each other, is my plan.
And I just want to name that Molly has entered the space. So we've already had some quite rich discussion. And by way of recap, so that we can hear from you, Molly, the consensus up to this point is for Katie to get working on a pictorial representation of the town that would go alongside the name. And on the screen, we are looking at Pelham, Zionsville, Huron Shores, and Plymouth as sort of primary examples of what that could look like, with the stipulation that the pictorial image conveys openness, which we see primarily through Huron Shores, Zionsville, and Plymouth on this screen. And we're discussing what the 3 to 4 key elements absolutely ought to be on that logo. So I know you sent us some really great feedback. I don't know if there's anything that you wanted to share into the space, or these are some of the sort of peer images that we're considering. If there's anything that you want to call out on the screen that you really love or want to speak to, I'm happy to hear from you.
Thank you, Danielle. No, that sounds great. I just picked out the ones on the screen that we're referencing, and I am totally on board with that being the direction we're heading. And I love the theme of openness being important to convey. And even these 3 examples sort of have some of the elements we'll, I imagine, be looking for. So thank you. Yeah, all good.
Awesome. Katie is
all I got.
Drafting. Or continue drafting.
Yes.
Okay. Danielle, have you anything else on the project update?
Yes.
To address?
Yes. So one logistical, I just want to walk everyone through the timeline. We've reviewed black and white logo concepts today. If you have any additional written feedback, the deadline to get that to Katie is tomorrow, so that she can turn these around. But I think we got some great feedback today. So thank you everyone for coming ready to contribute. We'll meet again next week to go over some brand designs and get another round of feedback. And then we'll come together again on May 14th with a final to vote on a final option or a final two options. This committee had expressed last time wanting to then share two options to the public to vote on. I want to, one, confirm that that is still what the committee wants to do, and two, raise a little bit of a concern regarding timing and see if we can amend that timing. So if we do want to put this forth for a public vote on the town website and on Facebook in the form of a poll, it will be available. I'm assuming there might be some minor revisions. So it'll be available on either the 14th or the 15th to share out. We had originally slated the 15th to the 20th for public voting, but I believe I heard from Nicole that the select board is available to vote on May 19th, which would make it possible for us to get the logos to Stantec. So if the select board needs to vote on the 19th, then we would need to tally the votes and vote to approve a logo and send it to the select board before then or on that day. So my question is, could we do voting from the 15th to the 18th, which would be a long weekend essentially, and have a special meeting on the 18th or the 19th to take a final vote and then pass it to the select board on the 19th so that they can vote to approve? It condenses the back end of our timeline. It shortens the voting period, and it would mean that we have to have a special meeting in order to make that approval.
So I think that's okay from my point of view, but we will need to submit the logo designs that we're polling to the select board earlier than Monday, simply because that information has to get to them. It has to get into their packet. Nicole, I think you could speak to that. So we could give them all that whole packet, give them, here are the designs that we're thinking, here's what we're polling, and then on Monday somebody should probably be there to say, and by the way, we've voted on this one, and this is the one that we think is going to be the right one. But they at least need to have that information on Thursday ahead of time. So
yeah,
we just need to
we get our packets on the Friday afternoon before the Monday meeting. So I imagine Melissa in Steve's office is probably going to want it by Thursday afternoon.
So that would be the 15th.
Yeah.
Right. And I think it's fine if we just give them, like, here are the final 2, 3, whatever we pick, and that on Monday we will give you the final results of what we've decided in our special meeting, and then they approve or disapprove from there.
Okay. So the 15th would be final designs for the packet. May 19th would be, well, are folks comfortable with meeting on the 18th or the 19th? The 18th is a Sunday.
I would prefer the 19th over the 18th, but I can make space.
I'm flexible on either.
The 19th does give a few more days for voting. Well, another day for voting.
19th can work.
19th is better for me as well.
Agreed on the 19th.
Yeah, 19 works.
Right, let's lock that in.
What time is the select board meeting on the 19th, Nicole?
6:30 at night.
Okay.
I think we're going to have to make an agenda for that too, aren't we, Chris?
Yep, we'll have to get it in earlier, so I will I'll just try to submit it like nowish, right? To make sure it gets in there. Right.
So,
it's just like end of this meeting.
Yeah.
In the interest of getting our recommendation to the select board with time for them to review, is it possible for us all to convene first thing Monday morning?
We have a time zone consideration, don't we?
How are you going to get them into if we get our packet the Friday before?
I think the packet will have both options, and then we will have to communicate our recommendation same day. Does that need to also be in the packet?
So we look through our packet over the weekend. I think if the board was put right on the spot and said, here, if they weren't able to see these logos prior to that, I think you might have some of them say, well, we're not ready to make a decision.
So the goal would be to deliver 2 final versions on Thursday prior, and then same day say, here's the results of the poll. So town
Okay, yeah,
is
that's fine.
60,
You're going to
40,
be at
50,
that.
50, whatever.
Yep,
And
because you're going to be
committee
at that
recommends.
meeting to explain what happened over the weekend and where the town landed. Yeah, okay, then yeah, that's fine.
If it's okay, and also Nicole, so the question is, who is at the meeting? How does that go? I mean, if that's 6:30, I guess we can have like a contingent from this crew or all of us or whoever is able. I certainly can be there. Katie, I think can be there.
I can
to answer
be at the
questions.
meeting for certain, and I have no problem presenting this information on behalf of the committee if necessary.
Okay, amazing. So in terms of this crew meeting to finalize, like, well, I hope we'll have a clear winner and it's not going to be a 50-50 split, but we would have this group make a final recommendation on Monday prior to 6:30. My suggestion is 9 a.m., 10 a.m., just that we could send an email over to the select board and say, this is our recommendation and this is the results of the town vote. And yes, we will also be there later in the evening to reiterate, but is that possible for folks?
Sounds good. 9.
Do you want to keep it at noon, or do we want to do something earlier? Like, it sounds like everybody's good with that day.
I think noon is good for consistency's sake and with people planning their schedules and everything.
I'm suggesting earlier so we have time if we were to ask Katie to make some kind of urgent last minute edit, which hopefully won't be the case.
Gotcha. I was envisioning us not having any more changes at this point, and
I hope we have absolutely no changes at this point.
Once the voting's done and everything else too, like I feel like it would be a nightmare to make changes to one of them and then people be like, that isn't one of the options I voted on. That's a terrible
I agree.
idea.
I know the timeline is short, but I think we have to lock it in before then.
And 12 is fine with me. I'll be around that day if I'm going to be joining the later meetings. So even if it's just getting files to you or whatever those last minute needs are, that's okay with me.
Okay.
All right, so I'll put noon on the agenda.
Yeah.
Okay.
That works.
Okay. Is anyone else anxious about it being
for sure
close? Okay. I mean, I don't know what an extra 3 hours will do, but
I mean, all of this timeline is very anxious and fast and worrisome. But I think that's just how we're rolling at this point.
That's well said, Chris.
And I'll toss out too, the main brand options are coming next Wednesday during this meeting. If I'm able to send before so that people can review them before the meeting, I will as well. Then that gives us discussion and what is that, a couple days to a week of potential revisions before the public would see it to vote on. So we've got some time built in there, but yes, please email us ASAP if you have any thoughts.
Okay, so
does that take care of that, Danielle?
Yes, that takes care of that. And then the final update is that We are still waiting on some feedback from Terry on the town seal, and we're also just pausing it to move through the next 2 weeks of logo design. So yes, that is it for me. Katie, anything else from you?
Okay. Well, thank you. Appreciate that. I feel like it was pretty constructive. All right, so we moving on to the any other topics to come before us today that aren't on the agenda?
This is an issue that we discussed before with the town newsletter going out. I happen to have an advanced copy of it, and I just want to share the quick statement that I dropped in there. I'm actually with the idea that we're going to have a vote this month, and have a solution. I know this goes out tomorrow, but I with the committee that's building this, so I can read this if folks want. But I took sort of what we had in the past, thanked people for helping us out with the survey. There was a lot of sentiment that we really need to hammer home that this was part of the ARPA funds, that it's not coming from our tax dollars. I invite people to learn more and join upcoming meetings. So I think the only addition I would put on here is that we're looking to have a final logo by the 19th. And I think it's worth putting in there to like really inform people, and like if people want to show up to the meetings, they better, because it's coming to the deadline. So I can read this if people want. It's on my screen if people are already reading it.
Yeah, no, I like it, and I agree. We should put the information in there that they're going to have a chance to vote, but the deadline is going to be close.
Yep. Yeah, so I'll add that in as well.
So maybe the headline here is not that we're just thanking people for taking the survey. This is a bigger update.
Yeah. Yeah.
I agree with that, Molly.
Well,
otherwise,
timeline. That's great.
Okay.
Yep.
Let me know if people are good for me to stop sharing. And
okay.
And maybe there's like something along the lines of like 2 weeks away, prepare to vote on the logo. And then the question is, where and how is that voting happening? Is if it's on Facebook, can we say on the town Facebook page and link to it? Make sure you're subscribed, liked, and following to be able to see that, right? Or visit this page to vote. So that's a Kate and Chris question for where and how that happens.
Yeah, we can get all of that set up, but I think good groundwork right now is like if members of this committee are able to continue putting out word about the town website and signing up for notifications, and the town's Facebook page and signing up for notifications, to just kind of anything you guys can do for ground footwork to help get the word out about these resources, so that when we have them up, more people are expecting them.
Okay, I just have a question as to how this is going to be fully accessible to everyone without social media.
Yeah, I would promote it on social media, but have the voting be on the town website. That way it's more accessible to everybody. We can put a banner on the town website, driving people to that page. I would also suggest,
that was my thought too, because you only want people voting in one place.
Right. Well, I would also suggest we can't have just online. We should have voting in perhaps the town hall and perhaps the library.
Senior center.
And yes, the senior center, but we would have to collect those and get them to our meeting for Monday morning.
Which I don't mind doing. Like if we get them, and I would prefer to hand them out, because we've had people say that they're going to like hand out documentation from these meetings and not have things picked up from Finnerty House. So I don't mind going and dropping off the voting materials once we agree on what those look like, and picking them up and scanning them in so everybody can see them.
Okay. So on sorry, let me look at my calendar. On the 15th, we're going to create these materials. Kate's going to very quickly distribute them to physical locations and then pick them up either Sunday evening or Monday morning, so that we can include that in our discussion and vote on the 19th at noon.
Yeah, they would be picked up on Monday morning, because the senior center isn't open on the weekends.
Okay. This is aggressive, but I like it.
And Kate, I can assist with those kind of materials. I would think it'd be easiest to maybe kind of put one person in charge at each of those places and have one sheet of paper that people can, you know, however it is voting, a check
Yep.
mark, or it's simple, you know.
Yeah, let's set up a separate email chain offline of this to put together all of the information and the assets and all that stuff too.
Hey, I'm in town during the day, during the week, so like I can come and help you with whatever driving or dropping off or picking up that you need. I'm home in Belchertown.
I love that idea of a chauffeur, Nicole. Thank you.
I don't think I was offering a chauffeur.
Okay. So, all right, we're going to work on that. Is there anything else to come before us here? Okay, do we have any moving on to public comments? Any letters to the committee, or any open comments? I don't see any other public people here today. So I think we'll move on. And so we're all set on the next meeting times. I see there's a timeline here in the chat. Danielle, are you going to publish that in an email as well?
I sent it around. It's also in our drive. It's in the Google Drive link timeline. Okay. So it just the updated version. And I can also send it in a recap. I'll remind everyone by email that our meeting is next Wednesday at noon. Okay. And share anything that Katie shares with you before then, or Katie might email you directly.
Okay, that sounds good. So at this point, I think we've completed everything, and so I'd ask for a motion to close the meeting.
Motion to close the meeting.
I second.
Okay, I'll a vote.
Kate Nato, aye.
Ed Knight, aye.
Nate Shattuck.
Molly Robinson, aye.
Chris Martin, aye.
Lisa.
I actually did the motion.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
But you still have to vote.
Yeah.
A motion is not a vote.
Oh, it is in my other meetings, but okay. Aye.
I'm sorry, it isn't.
Okay.
Thank you, everyone.
Do we have everyone? Yes. Okay.
Thank you,
Thank
everyone.
All right. Have a good day.
Thank you. Take care.
Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.